Hi, you're watching BloombergQuint. This morning we're discussing the deal that's been hogging the headlines over the last few days. That is the merger or the proposed merger of IDFC Limited and IDFC Bank with the three companies of the Shriram Group, two of which are listed, which is Shriram Transport Finance and Shriram City Union. Now, this is an effort to create a financial conglomerate by which IDFC Bank gets exposure to retail assets, and the retail assets, that is the Shriram Group companies, get exposure to the potential stability of a bank. It's not clear as yet whether this deal will go through. Right now, both parties are in a 90-day exclusivity talk period, but a lot of analysis has been done on which group of shareholders stands to benefit here. And there is a fifth group, let me remind you, which is Piramal Enterprises, the Ajay Piramal controlled company that is invested in the three Shriram Group companies, and that will also be involved in this deal. Now, to analyze it, I have with me, or we have with us today on BloombergQuint, Anil Singhvi, well-known corporate governance expert, chairman of ICANN and also founder of IIAS, which is a proxy advisory firm, and of course BloombergQuint's Dugal, who is the banking, finance and economy editor here. So to both of you, good morning. Mr. Singhvi, who benefits from this deal?
Media, if that is the question which you wanted to.
Why media?
I think it's again one more time for them to really jumble up and keep talking about it. All the papers are written about it, channels are covering it. So it's media. Actually, it's more of a media exercise.
No, let's get serious. Honestly, there are what?
I was serious,
two,
Menaka,
four,
so
five listed companies and their shareholders involved in this transaction. If it does go through, and currently, based on what most analysts are expecting the deal to be, the belief is that it's the Shriram companies shareholders that might end up with the short end of the stick. Menaka,
let's analyze it in totality, right? The point which I have is that first you look at IDFC. IDFC was a non-banking financial services company until a bank was carved out of it, which according to me was a big mistake to begin with. They shouldn't have made a bank out of an NBFC without realizing that this bank could not stand on its own two legs on that. So it's been struggling for the last 2 years. In fact, according to me, had this not been made into a bank, I don't think this situation would have been there today for seeking for a merger. So what I'm driving home the point is that this merger or this proposed structure, because there's no merger today, there's a proposed structure is coming out of desperation. In fact, today you have a disparate and desperate two groups trying to do something which is really not adding any value to anyone. And let me explain. So I'm saying that this IDFC bank carved out from IDFC has really not yielded any benefit to the shareholders of erstwhile IDFC. It was trading, as you remember, it was trading at 180 rupees before even this carved out was done. And today both put together is just about 120 bucks.
But it's been only what, a little over a year of the IDFC Bank?
20 months about.
Yeah.
Let me remind you, you're also sounding like almost like IDFC chairman who should have known. In fact, yesterday when he came on the TV, he said it's just last year that the bank got carved out. The bank was inaugurated on 1st October 2015. So it's almost 2 years. Now when you look at it, just another small bank got listed yesterday. The market cap of that bank is 15,000 crore.
You're talking about AU.
I'm not talking about any bank. I'm just reminding you of this. RBL, which was a Ratnakar bank, today the market cap is 20,000 crore. So what has this bank done in last 2 years? In fact, the worth of the license when it was carved out was itself talked about a huge worth of that license. But today you haven't seen those kind of benefits accruing to the shareholders of IDFC. So when you look at from the IDFC shareholders point of view, what has happened is that after carving out, you're left with only a holdco. Holdco called IDFC. Then you have underlying assets under this, which are like private equity or mutual funds and securities business, all of that. And you have a holdco discount being given to IDFC. So first of all, this is a very, very fractured arrangement which was there, which carved out in 2015.
Okay, but that's history.
One minute, let me explain. Since I'm here, allow me to speak on this. Now you have another situation where you want to merge or propose to merge City Union, Shriram City Union with IDFC Bank under the garb of this that they will have some retail footprint, because the CASA, if you look at the IDFC Bank's journey last 2 years, it's pathetic. It has really not been able to become a retail bank. That means what? It is not that a retail bank is really not working in India for any other situation, but it's because the bank does not have a DNA to become a retail bank. the bank lacks on account of having a DNA of becoming a retail bank, but it was always a wholesale
an
bank.
acquisition that allows it to inorganically acquire what it does not organically
Not
have
necessarily-
is not necessarily a bad strategic move. Wouldn't you agree?
No, I mean partly they get. I mean, so this is Rajiv Lal's argument that we get access to retail clients, but they're essentially just getting assets. They have not, as Mr. Singhvi was saying, they have not been able to build CASA. Their CASA is 5.2% of their deposit
been 2
base.
years.
But still, 5.2%.
There are enough examples in the history of banking. In 2 years' time, the CASA can't be just at 5%. That means you have failed miserably to be a retail bank. And again, mind you, a brand as good as IDFC, it's like HDFC Bank getting carved out from SDFC. They started with a similar kind of pedigree, and they really done a phenomenal job on
But
this.
the market is different. The banking market, when HDFC, I mean, just to be fair to them, the banking market is completely
But
different.
Ila, you will agree with me that IDFC is a hell of a brand. Okay, this brand
is.
has been destroyed in last 2 years because now everyone thinks that IDFC is of no consequences, which is where my problem is. That IDFC, was an NBFC, today when you have a bank and bank hasn't done anything in 2 years' time. And again, in today's environment and today's world, to say that in 2 years I have not been able to do it, you are being unnecessarily charitable to any organization. Because
I'd argue, Mr. Singhvi, that you're being unnecessarily uncharitable or harsh
people
to
do not
IDFC.
have no, but people do not have the patience to wait indefinitely. Secondly,
but then the merger is the perfect argument.
I'm coming to the point.
Perfect argument to your point,
Yes.
that they haven't been able to build out this one area of strength, which they're attempting to do through a merger, because organically it would take them, I would imagine, in this day and age and strategically, a very long period to do
it
that.
is a huge risk which you are building, Menaka, for the simple reason that a thing which you could not do, that does not mean that my buying out and outsourcing will help me in that. That may be an argument, but an argument when I think I'm strong enough to absorb that whole thing, that city union, and have a retail footprint. And
Why would you say
And
it's
as Ila rightly said, what they are suffering is on account of CASA, not on account of building the retail asset side of the business. That's never been a problem as much as the building of the liability side of the business. Not to say that you are acquiring a city union which is more bringing to you the assets, not the liabilities. It's foolhardy to say that I'm acquiring all these customers and they will per se open the account with me and I will have a saving and current account balances coming onto this. This is naive.
But how else can you do it inorganically?
Yeah, so I think
Is there
that's
an
the point.
alternate route,
So
right?
that's the, I mean, I'm sure Dr. Lal will not make that point because it makes him sound, well, desperate. But the question is, what is the liability franchise in the market that you can acquire? There isn't one.
No.
Unless you go down south and buy one of the small, old private sector
Ila,
banks.
my simple thing is that because you are so desperate,
Yes.
and because you are a fractured situation does not mean you committed one mistake, don't compound it.
But then what do you do? How do you suggest that
No,
IDFC Bank
my answer-
would be able to build out that retail franchise
Get
on
sold,
both ends?
Get sold to another bank, that's the only answer. Don't try to do something stupid as this, that I will acquire now because I don't have it. You don't have a DNA. You don't have a DNA of being a bank. You made a mistake in 2015. Please rectify it, get sold to another bank, or else let IDFC get merged with IDFC Bank. And I find here, our regulator.
How is that going to help in the retail
No,
franchise?
no. At least my discount of holding company will go away. Now let me argue out first on the shareholder of being the IDFC as I started
okay,
on
so
this.
a good disclosure here. You own 5 shares of IDFC.
I would not say how many shares I own, but I'm
you
saying
are a marginal shareholder of IDFC.
my-
Let's put it that way.
okay, even given that, I'm not arguing just because I'm a shareholder. I
No,
would not
because
argue.
you said you're a shareholder. I'm making the disclosure.
Yeah, but what I'm saying here is that it born with a huge fractured situation. Don't compound it by bringing in some more element. Let me complete that. Menaka, you're looking very impatient
I
here.
have questions. I have questions. But
My third point to this is that if suppose that mistake was there, either you rectify that mistake, that means what? Bring IDFC back into IDFC Bank fold. So IDFC becomes again merges with IDFC Bank. And I find it, and today I feel very pained, and I must spell out my pain. Reserve Bank's policies on banking license have been biggest flip-flop, and IDFC and IDFC Bank is a good result of that flip-flop policy.
why do you say that?
I'm articulating my thoughts, that they have changed the banking license norms enough times on this. Now, in one case, they are saying that you can't have, in case of IDFC, they said, or IDFC Bank, they said you can't have asset management businesses, you can't have private equity and securities business under the bank. How the other banks are having it? All banks have it. Why are you denying this to IDFC? There was no reason. In fact, the whole IDFC could have become IDFC Bank. Why did you have to work out a situation where you have IDFC Bank coming out on this? It was a licensing problem. Secondly, on the other side, when you have Uday Kotak, you're asking Uday Kotak that come down from 30% to 15%. On the other side, you're saying don't come down below 40%. In fact, yesterday IDFC chairman, and I bless him, he should have known about it. He argued the other way around, that I've been asked by Reserve Bank to come down below 40%, that's why I'm doing this merger city union.
Yeah,
Bizarre. He made a mistake, he made a glaring mistake and error of judgment on this case. Because the other way around, RBI doesn't want to go below 40. And because RBI doesn't want to go below 40, what you have done in this case? Merge city union, keep transport separately. It's absurd. Just because you have one problem here, you're trying to solve the other problem, you keep city union separately. Now what are you saying for the city union? What are you saying for the transport? You're saying that Shriram Transport will remain as an independent entity. Mr. Vinod Rai yesterday said that we will merge it. So I don't even know whether it will remain separate entity, whether it will be merged. If it is merged, whether they will be issued the IDFC shares.
No, but even if it remains a separate entity, they will technically, if you were to design a scheme,
this is not as per RBI guideline.
No, I know, but I'm saying even if it were, depending on how RBI gives them permission or doesn't, even if it were to be merged, they would end up with IDFC shares. Even if it were not to be merged and held as an independent, unlisted subsidiary, which means they would get delisted in a merger scheme.
How? Why?
They would hold IDFC shares.
So once I hold your thoughts. First of all, Shriram Transport is a listed company.
Correct.
By no stretch of imagination, you can say just because I'm doing something, I'll delist you. What the hell? What is going on here?
They said that though. They said that.
Who they?
Dr. Lal said that. That is
Mr.
the plan. Mr. Piramal said.
First of all, Dr. Lal has no locus on that.
Yeah, so Mr. Piramal and Dr. Lal in the press conference.
I'm talking about as a shareholder of Shriram Transport, you have no locus. You can't just wake up tomorrow morning and say, I'll delist SDFC Bank because I'm doing something with that. You can't make an announcement. You have no locus. First of all, I even challenge the locus of Mr. Rajiv Lal to talk about IDFC.
1 second.
Leave aside Shriram Transport. He is a CEO of a subsidiary company. Can Mr. Aditya Puri talk about SDFC? Though he is running a very successful franchise.
Mr. Singhvi, but Mr. Tyagarajan was there.
Mr. Tyagarajan was there, Mr. Piramal was there.
This is
Mr. Tyagarajan is also
obviously a merger structure that's been designed with all parties on board, and in which they have said that we are not sure whether we would have to keep it as an independent entity.
Menaka, sometimes having these kind of assumptions don't work. Now you are saying that...
No, I understand that shareholders may or may not be very pleased about a delisting
My point is
via
very
scheme
simple.
route versus, let's say, an ordinary delisting.
Let me punch some holes in your theory.
But it's not my theory. This is the proposed structure.
I want to punch some holes on this. No, your theory. What you are saying is that it is presumed or assumed, I don't know which word did you use, that all are on board. Okay? I'm saying very simply that today when you look at the shareholding structure, the two gentlemen sitting out there, they do not own as much as the Employee Welfare Trust owns the shares in City Union and Transport.
Referring to
Shriram. Secondly, there was no representation when the media conference was there of IDFC. So when I look at the two...
Mr. Sunil Kakkar was there. He wasn't on the podium, but he was there. Mr. Sunil Kakkar, who is taking over from Vikram.
Hold your breath. I think you guys just jump to the conclusions. He is a CEO in waiting.
In waiting, yes.
He has to be approved. First of all, he has to assume the office. Secondly, he has to be approved by the shareholders.
Sure.
Okay? So these two things have to be born. Today, he is only a CFO of IDFC Bank. So let's not jump to the conclusion.
But both boards, or rather all boards, agreed
Do
to
I
go
have
through with
between
this.
the two women here few minutes? Because I know that you always love to talk, but allow a man to speak. Please.
Ouch! Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. So my point is that the two large shareholders of the entire scheme, that's a welfare trust and IDFC, both were not represented there. And I have enough reasons to say this, and I'm saying with a complete responsibility. Where was the need of having this board meeting on Saturday when the IDFC chairman was not present? He is the holdco chairman. He was traveling to London and Singapore as per his own media discussion yesterday. When you don't have a chairman of the holdco and who's away for almost last 4 or 5 days, what was earth-shattering on Saturday to hold this board meeting?
Can I attempt to answer the question?
Can
I attempt to answer?
Could you not have this board meeting on Monday? Heavens would have to fallen because you are not declared A, structure, B, swap ratio, C, any regulatory approvals which you may have on hand. So if you could have a 90-day window, the window could have been a 92 days. It doesn't make any difference. But let the meeting be attended by the chairman of the holding company.
What suggests to you that Mr. Rai was not present remotely in the meeting? What suggests to you that he is not in agreement with this proposed structure?
My point
and
is...
what proof do you have that everybody else on board is not really on board, Mr. Singhvi?
Okay.
It's not fair to cast aspersions when you've had most of the managements there. In fact, Deepak Parekh, who doesn't necessarily have any executive role in any of the companies, was also there. I think would it not be unfair to suggest that some shareholders, key shareholders in this process are not necessarily or don't necessarily have full buy-in? We have no reason to believe that.
Are you through?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Point number one is that when you do not have a chairman of a holding company, I hazard a guess on this, I don't think there would be any company of any consequence where you can conduct a board meeting and say that I'm coming with such a very large scheme. It's not a small thing. It's a scheme, if it goes through, will dilute IDFC also by 70-80%. When you have, allow me please, when you have such a large scheme coming in, the physical presence of the chairman, according to me, is a must.
Okay.
B, when he was traveling last 5-7 days, and I will presume that last 5-7 days are the crucial days for any scheme of this nature to really get all the pieces together. If that not the case, if suppose those pieces were not following the case on Saturday, then you could have might as well postponed it to Monday. So my point is very simple, when you do not have the presence, and secondly, Menaka, you asked me this question that he was present by electronic media or electronic mode.
I would assume so. I don't think they would do such an important
Then he
board
won't have made such blunders in yesterday's interview when he talked about STC merging with IDFC. And when a question was asked by the media channel whom we have interviewed with, he kept on saying, any question asked for IDFC Bank, he kept on saying, ask the IDFC Bank CEO, don't ask me. This question is not relevant for me. You are 53% owner of the IDFC Bank. You have all the locus to answer a question if it is concerning IDFC Bank. My second point is, if he said that it is IDFC Bank CEO to answer the IDFC Bank question, then how dare IDFC Bank CEO answer all the questions for IDFC? What is it? What's going on here?
Okay, so we've established that broadly speaking, you are not in favor of this transaction at all.
No, did I say?
And that you actually
no,
believe
that's your
that
presumption.
all-
That's
Well,
your
you just
presumption.
said that
No,
you
I haven't.
thought-
I'm answering all your questions. You are saying that everyone was on board. I'm saying if
I'm
everyone
saying,
was on board.
Are you in favor of the transaction? The structure that has been proposed so far?
My point is very simple, Menaka, here, that it born out of a very fractured situation.
Fair enough.
You're compounding it with having a very, very uncertain structure on top of it.
All of that said, are you in favor of the transaction?
I'm not, for the simple reason, I'm not opposing it for the sake of opposition. That's why let me dwell on this point. Now, when you look at City Union coming into IDFC Bank fold, okay, you can't do anything more because your 40% limit is there. So what you're doing is looking at what the regulator or regulations will allow. You're again having a very fractured situation. So I'm saying that you're getting too fractured. So वो तो दो लंगड़े घोड़े हो
And
गए, दो
even
फ्रैक्चर
that
हो
you
गए.
don't know if you're going to be able to do, right? They are saying that they've had some informal discussions with the regulator, but why should the regulator allow Shriram
No, but-
Transport Finance to be kept out? Because, sir, I mean, going back to the earlier point that you were making, you know, there has been a difference in the licensing guidelines in the previous round and in this round.
What
There-
a round.
When Kotak got licensed.
Why?
That time the RBI had a different view. This time the new bank licensing guidelines very clearly have this 40% provision that you can't dilute below 40%. They also say that you cannot have an NBFC business that you can do through a bank in a separate company. They are trying to now convince the RBI that allow us to keep Shriram Transport Finance out because people like Kotak have Kotak Prime, which is outside the bank. So the problem, I agree with you, comes partly because the RBI in the middle of this 10-year period has changed its view on how it wants bank licensing
My
to go.
point, Ela, is exactly same. RBI's all flip-flop policies have resulted in minority shareholders getting shafted. And I will give you an example on this, that SEBI will never come out with a policy which is having that, okay, we will allow this company to have a takeover guideline, the other company will exempt to have a takeover guidelines. Why?
Actually, they did that for SpiceJet, but that's a whole different
no,
conversation.
that's a-
okay,
that-
but
that's a
can I
different
come back to
situation.
this proposed merger? Fractured, born out of desperation. You've eloquently, you know, sort of described what you think the circumstances surrounding the transaction are.
No, I'm not finished yet. So let me
Yes,
explain. Let me
okay.
last point on this whole conversation. So you have a situation. You have a Shriram Capital on one side, okay, and you have IDFC on the other side. Let's look at it. Whenever we talk about two groups, I mean, Rajiv Lal labored so much in saying two groups are coming together. I don't know which group, but I'm trying to define. So you have a Shriram Capital which is owned by Employee Welfare Trust, okay, and IDFC which is like owned by Government of India, Khazana, and all the likes of all this, okay. When you look at these two set of shareholders, finally, according to me, I mean, and forgive my saying this, ultimately the companies are owned by shareholders, not by the board, okay. So let this not be go out of the sight of any discussion which you may have on any corporate restructuring on that. When you look at that, you are not creating value for both sets of shareholders. And I'll elaborate where I'm coming from. Any structure or any of these kind of reorganizations are not good, and they will fall flat on the face for the simple reason they are not creating value for both sides of shareholders. And third point, when we had this media conference on Saturday, none of them were present.
The shareholding. So you're talking about the Shriram Trust was not present.
Ultimately, they are the people who should be, according to me, should be deciding and will be deciding on that. Now, somebody raised this issue that maybe that shareholders' approval is not needed.
No, of course, I'm
this
sure
case.
whatever merger scheme they come up with,
I don't know, people-
shareholders will vote on it, and if they approve the transaction, great. If they don't,
But tell me
you'll
one
have
thing,
your
Menaka,
answer.
let me ask one question to you, okay? If this is such a good scheme, if this is such a well-orchestrated, well-defined, well-articulated scheme, why was it that IDFC chairman was fumbling on every aspect of it yesterday?
Well, no. Mr.
No,
Singhvi,
you can't. I mean, answer my question.
I'm not going to predicate the assessment of this scheme on the ability of someone to be able to communicate his views on a TV channel or otherwise. Let's look at it in terms of what we
You
have
want to
in front of
explain
us.
to me? Otherwise,
No, I don't know why he was fumbling, and I don't think that's linked to the scheme. Maybe he's not, maybe he was traveling, maybe he was in a car. I have no clue what the circumstances are. I'm just interested in knowing.
you were definitely traveling when the scheme was being cooked, and that's my problem.
Okay,
is
maybe that was the case. You think that the shareholders of the 4 companies, listed companies involved in this transaction,
Why-
stands or barring Piramal Enterprises, 4 companies all stand to lose in this. That's your view?
My view is also born out of the fact that yesterday, all 4 traded company shares were trading at least 3 to 5% below their Friday closing.
So you're saying that you expect that no one set of shareholders will benefit from this?
First of all, when you look at the scheme itself, there are question marks whether RBI will allow that or not. According to me, every board fails when they do not know whether the scheme will go through or not, and they propose a scheme. They failed in their job completely. Because as a shareholder, as a common shareholder, I have really no idea what RBI's policies are. I have no idea. I have trusted the gentleman there and elected them into the boardroom to guide me on that, rather than me to figure it out whether RBI will allow or not. Third point, what was the need of coming out with a press conference and creating so much of a buzzword around it when you don't even have the swap ratios? You say we'll figure it out later on. So what is the scheme?
I'll attempt an answer to that before I throw it back to Hira to put her questions to you, and that is that
No, but don't you think in my argument on
maybe the
this?
news leaked the previous week. We saw the stocks running up. Maybe I haven't asked them this question, but maybe that could be the reason.
In this country, for every transaction, news leaks.
I agree with you.
So they're not
which
unique.
is why maybe they thought that it was imperative for them to address some of these rumors right then and there.
But
Now,
they could
why
have,
they
they
did
could
it
have,
on Saturday
they
and
could
not
have,
on Monday.
but they
I
could
don't
have,
have an
without
answer.
having a board meeting and without
They
having
did
so much
have a
of.
board meeting.
I'm
They
saying,
did have board meetings on Saturday.
Miss Menaka Doshi, would you allow me to speak, please?
Sir,
Thank
you have.
Because what I'm saying is that there was no reason for them to then call a board meeting. They could have admitted to stock exchanges, we are in a dialogue. In Western world, all the time they say this, we are in dialogue to
nothing
discuss
has
all
been
the rumors.
concluded.
But then you don't have to have a hurried board meeting where everyone is talking differently on this and leave me as a shareholder completely confused.
So, I
Regulatory
don't.
challenges.
Huh?
Regulatory challenges.
No, I actually want to talk about. I don't know if we have the time to talk about Piramal's role because.
No, we do. It's a
Because
question.
that is
It's
a big
question,
that is
yeah.
a big overhang in all of this, right? I mean, Piramal gets equity as we were trying to figure it out.
What
we
is
didn't quite.
Piramal, sorry?
Ajay
Enterprises.
Piramal gets equity in.
He's a shareholder in.
He owns 20% in. So I'm saying,
he's a
yeah,
shareholder.
Piramal Enterprises owns
yeah. So we.
shareholders.
He's a shareholder.
No, so the point
So
we
is
make.
TPG, so is Apex, so is Khajana, so is Government of
Yeah,
India.
no, I
So
think
why
the
are we
point-
attaching value to one share?
I'll tell you why.
And
Because
he said
his
he's
role-
only an investor.
That's what he said. But his role.
Oh, that's what he said. That means there's something more than what he said.
He said, I will be a minority investor, nothing
No,
more,
he's-
nothing less.
no,
No,
he
I
said-
don't know why you think we
he
look
said-
like Rajiv Lal
I
and
know.
Ajay Piramal because you're baiting us. There's no point in that.
No, we are
But
making
question
the
here
point
is-
My
that
point
Piramal's
is,
role is
I'm
going
a
to
very poor shareholder, so I saw somewhere that both of you are mighty ones and you will just beat me up on that. So I said, let my voice be traveled to all the
Mr.
Humble
Singhvi,
what the
question,
board-
Mr. Singhvi.
board
Yeah,
members
victim
here.
mood does not suit you.
Humble question is that isn't the Piramal role in this eventual entity also going to be a big question mark? Because he is an industrialist, he does have businesses in real estate, more than 40% of his business comes from outside financial services, all of which are conditions laid down in the new banking license guidelines. How is his role going to
Ila,
be comfortable?
let me answer your question very differently. And again, that brings me to the flip-flop policies of Reserve Bank of India. Reserve Bank of India did not grant license to Mr. Ajay Piramal. that's
They didn't,
Piramal Enterprises.
yes.
They did not grant the license to Shriram Group because they wanted to become a bank, and when they were told that they can't have all the NBFCs coming into this. So when you have a situation where Reserve Bank of India by its own policy did not allow something to happen, now all of them have come together and said that, oh, here we have solution to all our problems. Mr. Piramal also has a pie in a bank. Shriram, which was waiting, and then they decided not to have some pie in the bank. And you have a fractured bank which was born out of an IDFC situation that you have. So that's what I'm saying. So three desperate situations can't result into a very big, robust business for me. So as a shareholder of all the four companies, when I'm arguing on behalf of shareholders of all the four listed companies, your own problems of not becoming a bank don't really just dump me into a situation where City Union goes into IDFC Bank, STC remains as a separate company under the umbrella of IDFC, which is already suffering a kind of holdco discount. As a transport company, Shriram Transport Company shareholder, why would I agree on becoming a shareholder of IDFC, which is suffering on account of 30, 40, 50% discount? Today, as I look at it, the book value or the sum part of the total of IDFC is $100. It's trading at 56 rupees. Why would I, as STC shareholder, suppose I'm STC shareholder, why would I want to have IDFC shares? For what? And what am I doing? I am an independent company, but you're holding the shares of some holdco. Why? I'm happy with who I am.
That was the broad takeaway from all the analyst conversations as well over the last 2 days,
Why?
which is that both the Shriram Group companies, which are listed, enjoy better valuations, better return ratios,
Better brand.
Why would they
than
become
IDFC or
correct.
IDFC Bank, and therefore it's those set of shareholders that stand to maybe be at a less advantage or lose more, depending on how you look at
No,
it.
Menaka, both sides. Let me now articulate
You're
my-
saying that it's IDFC Bank shareholders.
No,
also.
both. I'm saying all four
And
are
IDFC.
losers. All four
are
losers.
Okay.
Why I'm saying this? Now, my last point to this. I do not know who's acquiring who. And I have.
They labored over that point, and
No,
Mr. Piramal interrupted the press conference to say that this is not an acquisition.
Everything
It's
is
a
everything is an acquisition in life, or whatever there is no, Menaka will agree with me, there is no term called merger, okay? So Companies Act also doesn't have merger. They talk about amalgamation of the two companies. Given that be.
Menka smiling, so I'm not sure whether she agrees or
No,
not.
no, that is
Technically, he's-
I would never argue with Mr. Singhvi on the law because he's done far many more acquisitions than any of us.
So there
here.
is nothing like merger. There is an amalgamation, then there is an amalgamated company. Okay, so in this case, the amalgamated company, and even if I want to give a name, IDFC-SHRIRAM. According to me, it's Shriram IDFC. It's not IDFC-SHRIRAM.
You're saying
Absolutely.
that
But the
basis
bank
of
license
size.
is with IDFC. That's the problem.
The
And they can't transfer the bank license.
No. My point is very simple, and I'm coming to the last point for my articulation for the shareholders of IDFC and IDFC Bank, that they also have been shafted in this case. When my currency, and my currency here is IDFC for STC shareholders and IDFC Bank for City Union shareholders. When my currencies are trading so poorly, the IDFC Bank is the only bank trading at 1.3 times the book. In fact, in the list of all the banks listed in the country, it is the lowest trading thing.
Yes.
In IDFC, because of the holdco discount, I'm trading, because of today the sum total of the parts is $100, I'm trading at 55. If I'm an acquirer, I will be an acquirer only when my currency is having a huge advantage, then I acquire something. If my currency is already going for a discount, it's like saying, I have a 100 rupee note and I want to sell it for $80 and I want to acquire something which is worth 120 or worth 60. It all depends on that equation. So when I am having a currency which is such a weak currency, am I an acquirer or should I have been an acquirer? According to me, IDFC Bank should be an acquiree than acquirer. It should be acquired by some other bank to merge it, to get and kill all the situation which arose out of a fractured situation. So my answer to this entire thing is either IDFC as it is, as full, should be acquired by somebody, or at least IDFC Bank should be acquired by a bank, rather than attempting to get something which you do not have. Your DNA is not to become a retail bank. That was a historical mistake you committed. Don't compound it by buying City Union, and don't compound it by saying that I will now acquire liabilities worth 25,000 crore. Where the hell will
That I
you get
agree
this
with.
money?
That I have to agree.
Now, Mr. Singhvi, can I
Where will you get
can
this?
I get a
No,
question
this-
in?
That I agree with.
this question-
In the interest of time, can I get a question in? And this question might be something you might want to actually, in fact, answer because it plays into your argument.
I've answered all questions.
No,
Menaka,
it
so why
plays
are you
into
saying
your
that?
argument of how this deal is not necessarily good for anybody involved. Because my final question on this to both of you is that who's going to manage this this financial conglomerate that eventually gets created? Is it going to be Rajiv Lal on the IDFC front, IDFC Bank front, and whoever is the next CEO of IDFC? Where or how will the management of Shriram play a role in this? Because they're the ones who really understand how to run a retail franchise. Or do you expect that because Ajay Piramal was also present there as chairman of the Shriram Group companies, he also has a financial services business of his own, he's been keen to acquire or become a bank, that he will also play a role in this in some fashion? Do you feel there could be management confusion, or do you think that these things will resolve themselves over time?
First of all, I don't think this will go through it. So it's a very hypothetical question you asked me.
Okay.
Even that be the case, I don't think Rajiv Lal is competent enough to run this whole thing. He has shown in last 5 years he's not created any value for shareholders. So I will not hazard a guess.
Mr. Singhvi, again, that's a little uncharitable, isn't
Let it be. How does it matter?
Okay, that's your view. All right.
The point is, since you asked me the question, I would have a right
fair
to
enough. All
answer
right.
on this.
Your view.
Any CEO who has not created a value on a sustained period of time, I don't think he should be given a chance to create more value with a larger piece on his hand. For the simple reason that today when you have a fractured situation of IDFC and IDFC Bank, and now you want to impose these two things more on top of it, and then you run a conglomerate which will have a book of almost about 2 lakh crore, I don't think it will be right thing. I think it will be, if at all it goes through, okay, and I don't think and I don't hope that it will go through, then hire somebody who's competent enough. And again, the last point what I want to make is that the cultural issue between a wholesale bank, okay, and an infrastructure bank to speak, okay, and to have a retail, and again this is more of a retail of a different nature and coming from both the culture of the business and the culture of the people. I've seen enough time these cultures don't match, and then you have a problem for a very long period of time. So apart from this, that who will be the CEO, according to me a CEO has to be like how Uday Kotak did it for ING Vessia, that you need to have such a strong banking personality to really do it. These kind of mergers don't work because they are completely, as I told you, they are so distinct, they are so separate, that to say that synergies will come in, no, according to me, the more fractured situation will land up on your face. Because of wholesale bank, because of a very different bank situation, and a retail business which is so different. And again, employee owned welfare trust, they are coming from a very, very different situation than to come into this. So I think we are, I mean, to sum it up, हम खिचड़ी पका रहे हैं, पता नहीं चावल कहाँ है, दाल कहाँ है और सब्जी कहाँ है. It is going to be a disaster.
It's a good point to leave it.
What have I missed out in this discussion? Because clearly I've not been able to change Mr. Singhvi's mind on this deal.
No, I think, I mean, we've all, that's been the take of all analysts, right? There's no guarantee that this is going to go through, and if it goes through, there's an even lesser guarantee that this will work in any fashion to transform IDFC into a universal bank.
But if it goes through, I think it's a slap in the face of Reserve Bank of India for flip-flop policies. When your policies, as you rightly articulated, very stated policy that what a bank can do, you should not, and rightly so.
I don't think the RBI should approve this actually. If they do, I think they have to come up with an explanation as to say why do you have this guideline if you're allowing people to do whatever the hell they want to.
Then why are you not allowing others? Why are you then insisting on Uday Kotak to come down? In fact, let me ask you this question, that why are you asking Uday Kotak, who's done a fabulous job in last 20 years in banking industry, why do you want a person to reduce his own personal holding into the bank and then say that he doesn't have any interest in the bank, so that this bank also becomes one of those other banks which have had problems in last 5-7 years?
No, I think once we have a stated policy, that's the stated policy. You should go by the letter of the policy.
Exactly the point. His licensing condition was not that he has to come down to 15%. His licensing condition was 49%.
49, yeah.
So why are we doing this? So why we have this flip-flop policy every time we change, we tinker here and there, and we have such fractured situations? In fact, this whole merger, according to me, is largely on account of very flawed policy of Reserve Bank of India.
No, I think it goes back to, but it goes back to the fact that IDFC should have never applied for a bank license.
Absolutely.
If they should have waited, they should have applied for a wholesale bank license if anything, but anyway, that's in the past.
No, but you can't compound. My point is exactly the same. You can't compound a mistake which was already there. So carry with the baggage and get merged with another bank or another financial institution and get rid of this.
I'd like to say that Mr. Singhvi has had the last word, but I suspect he's not, because if this merger structure is in fact approved over the next 90 days and does in fact become a scheme of amalgamation and is put to vote by shareholders, we've already been told by the management of IDFC Bank that all shareholders will vote on it, including promoters, at the various shareholder meetings that will take place, and I'm sure Mr. Singhvi will have an issue with that. We'll come back after 90 days to talk to him about that as well. Thanks very much for tuning in to BloombergQuint.
Thank you. Oh God, we talked